Ranking new movies released in July from worst to best. In dead last place is the newest Smurfs movie. I'm not gonna lie, watching this film should be counted as a cruel and unusual punishment. This thing's terrible. And yes, I know it's a dumb kids movie, but kids films can at least be good. This is complete garbage, and I don't know why Hollywood tries to keep making the Smurfs happen, because clearly people really just don't care anymore. The film has only made $69 million worldwide, which is kind of nice, but actually pretty terrible because this film actually cost $58 million to make somehow, which is kind of crazy that it cost this much because the animation looks super cheap for the most part. It looks like something that will pop up on a bowling alley screen after you get like a strike or something. I guarantee a pretty large amount of the budget went to getting Rihanna to play the voice of Smurfette and sing like 2 original songs. I'm not gonna lie, one of the songs she has in the middle of the movie actually isn't terrible, but it was definitely not worth the money they spent to get her in this role. But the craziest part about this movie is that the entire marketing campaign was focused on Rihanna being Smurfette, but the main character of the film is actually a Smurf voiced by James Corden, the most unsufferable man in Hollywood. In 8th place, I have Eddington, the newest film from director Ari Aster, and this takes place during a lockdown of the 2020s, and it's kind of trying to show like, oh, all the different politics going on at this time and the division among people and the misinformation that was being spread. A lot of people are mad at this film because they think it's politically like playing both sides and is afraid to take a stance on something. That's not even my real problem with the movie. My problem is we all just lived through this like 5 years ago, and the film really brings nothing new to the table. It just shows us what we all lived through and already know happened at that time. The movie's way too long for the story being told. It just meanders around with a bunch of super uninteresting characters and commits the biggest crime any movie can do, is be simply boring. Number 7, I can't believe it's not in last place either. It's Bambi the Reckoning, the newest horror film taking place in the Pooh-verse, like Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey and stuff, because yes, every sweet childhood movie needs to be turned into a horror film now. This is obviously not a good movie. It's incredibly stupid in every single way, shape, and form. The entire family drama aspect they try to get into this film is so stupid. And the movie actually tries to like have a tearjerker moment at the end. It's like, no, I just watched an hour and a half of a killer deer running around. Don't try to get serious on me. But it's not completely unwatchable. Like, it is just incredibly dumb fun. This deer literally running around killing people. The special effects are surprisingly okay, especially compared to the other terrible movies in this franchise. Yes, incredibly stupid, but I've wasted 80 minutes watching even worse movies than this in my life, so it's not the worst thing ever. Number 6 is the new I Know What You Did Last Summer. That's kind of like a sequel reboot all in one. It's pretty much just like the same story as the first movie, but dumber in every way, shape, and form. If you don't know what the plot of these movies are, pretty much a bunch of dumb teens do something on one night and it results in some random person dying, and then a year later they get a note saying, hey, I know what you did last summer, you were a result of this guy's death, and pretty much people start getting killed. I do think Madeline Klein actually does have potential to be like the next like big horror actress. Like, she was pretty good in this movie, even though the script is absolutely horrible. The real biggest offender of this movie is how it relies on nostalgia from the first film, because we're bringing back multiple characters from the first movie that either have absolutely zero impact on the story and are just here to literally be like, oh hey, that's a person from the first movie, or the decisions they make with the characters that come back and actually do have an impact on the story are just the dumbest things you've ever seen in your life. And I absolutely hated the ending of this. Like, big slasher movies like this really hinge on the reveal, and this one was so stupid. Before my top 5, make sure to drop a like on the video and let me know in the comments below your ranking of any new movies you saw in July. At number 5 for me is Happy Gilmore 2. Don't be fooled, it's not a good film, worse than the first. Now, I won't lie, I do think the first like 20 minutes of this film actually has multiple very funny moments that are just so purely ridiculous you can't help but laugh. But after that, this suffers from the same thing as I Know What You Did Last Summer. It's just another sequel coming out like 30 years after the original that's some reason longer than the original, and just gets stupider in every single way, shape, or form. Like, the thing we get into with like the new version of golf that this guy's inventing, so incredibly stupid. And again, instead of actually focusing on just writing like a funny movie that can stand on its own, pretty much half the runtime of this film is focused on literally either showing you flashbacks of the first Happy Gilmore or just having a character from the first film again return in this movie for the audience to be like, oh hey, look, it's that funny guy from the first film. But there's no point of them being in this film, and it's not even a joke half the time. It's just the same character showing up. The only time the nostalgia trick kind of worked for me is when Ben Stiller came back as his character, because I do think this character was very funny in the first film. It's funny in this one, and Ben Stiller is just hilarious when he does comedy. And number 4 is a new horror film called Together. This stars Dave Franco and Allison Brie, who are actually a real-life married couple. In the movie, they're going through some relationship problems, and it follows them moving to this brand new town away from their friends and family. And one day when they're on a walk, they stumble upon this supernatural power that makes things get very, very weird and freaky. This movie fully leans into the body horror element, so if you're not a fan of that stuff, which I'm really not either, this movie will make you very squeamish. And I will say the movie is kind of more just gross and uncomfortable to watch than it is like a scary horror film. Like there's only like one or two moments that are actually like scares in the movie, in my opinion. Honestly, the rest of the film is pretty lighthearted and like almost a super dark comedy. Like there's lots of really funny moments in this film. And as someone that's not really a big fan of body horror films at all, that did make this movie a lot more enjoyable to me, because I do think Dave Franco and Alison Brie, they are very funny together, and the movie is just super entertaining to watch. It's not a masterpiece or anything, but the first movie on this list I'd actually call a pretty good film. At number 3, I have Jurassic World Rebirth, obviously the newest film in the Jurassic Park franchise. I think this movie could have been so much better, but there were some really solid moments in this. My biggest problem with this movie is that it's just an incredibly safe and predictable film all throughout. Like pretty much every single major plot point or action sequence, you already know how it's going to turn out the second it starts happening. I do really like the main cast of this film, like Jonathan Bailey, Scarlett Johansson, Mahershala Ali. I do really love those three together. My problems again come with the family characters that get introduced to the movie, because it just makes the movie a little bit spread too thin when you're focusing on so many different characters. But I will say I did like these characters individually. Again, it just overcrowds the movie, but especially like the daughter's boyfriend, he had some of the funniest lines in the entire movie to me. And this sounds pretty negative, so you're probably wondering how it's this high up on the list, but I think the movie does a great job at capturing some of the charm and magic of the original Jurassic Park, like kind of exploring this island, seeing some of these dinosaurs for the first time are really some great scenes when that Jurassic Park theme kicks in. I thought the movie was going to lean into the horror elements a lot more based on the trailers, which it really doesn't, which is kind of disappointing, but when it does go kind of full horror movie in the last like 20 minutes, it does really work and have some great moments as well. A flawed movie, but definitely a step in the right direction for this franchise that had been getting worse and worse with each previous Jurassic World film. And number 2, I have the Fantastic Four: First Steps, a really good movie that was super close to being great for me, but for the most part, this really worked. I absolutely love our entire new cast. I think they give us great performances and new versions of these characters that are probably the most comic accurate we've ever seen. Joseph Quinn as Johnny Storm, the MVP of the movie for me, honestly. Well, actually, if I'm being honest, he's kind of co-MVPs with the Silver Surfer and Galactus. All three of these characters were handled pretty perfectly, in my opinion. I absolutely adore the first hour of the movie. The entire space sequence of seeing Galactus for the first time, the one chase scene that happens, are absolutely incredible. Some of the best stuff we've ever gotten in the MCU. And speaking of that, this is probably the best looking film visually in the MCU of all time. Problems come in the second half. I think the plot just kind of falls apart a little bit. I'm not the biggest fan of some of the plans that the characters have, some of the ways they act. And I think my biggest problem with it is simply that last hour of the film really needed an extra 20 to 30 minutes to kind of flesh out a lot more of the plot points a little bit more, give us some extra time with these characters, because the second half just feels a little bit too rushed. It's not terrible or anything. I still really like the movie. That's just my problem with it. I am super excited to see these characters more going forward. The score is absolutely incredible and a really great entry in the MCU. But at number 1 for me, it's got to be Superman. James Gunn cooked harder than I could have ever imagined with this film. It is pretty much close to perfect in a lot of ways. Like the score is incredible, entire casting, like Superman, Lex Luthor, just A++ castings. The movie looks great. The action is just non-stop. This movie runs at 1,000,000 miles per minute, but it never feels rushed, in my opinion. Like it feels properly paced out, just moving at this fast speed. It feels like a comic book come to life. I love how we're leaning into the way more fantastical elements of this character and this new DC universe. It's really one of my favorite movies of the entire year so far. Let me know in the comments below your list of July movies you watch from worst to best. If you want to see my rankings of every previous month from January to June, click the playlist at the top of the screen. Or if you want to see my individual reviews for all these movies and so much more, click the playlist on the bottom.